You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. Today we're going to do something totally different. We always talk about climate change and geopolitics. Today we're going to talk cameras. What do you say? Total change of pace.
All right, I'm in.
Anyway, at the end of today's episode, we are going to be announcing the winners of the Fujifilm sweepstakes, so stay tuned for that.
Woot, woot.
But
Thank you.
First, we're going to be talking about the new mirrorless full-frame cameras from Canon and Nikon, which have been announced in the past few days. Now, we had a chance to handle the Canon EOS R, Jason and I earlier, for about 4.5 minutes. And we're also being joined today by Levi Tenenbaum, a veteran of the show who actually handled the Nikon. Otherwise, we're going to be talking using specs and all of the stuff that the rest of us have seen. But there's a lot to talk about here. This is obviously a big change for the industry. For the longest time, Sony was the only real mirrorless full-frame camera out there. And now all of a sudden, Canon and Nikon went along with it. They realized that this is the future. They have new cameras, and we're going to talk about how they compare to each other as well as the existing Sony cameers.
And they both dropped within a week of each other.
Yeah.
That was amazing. Yeah, that was really something.
Yeah. Think it's coincidental?
You think it has to do with the holidays? But anyway, let's start talking about the Canon EOS R system. And I think it's kind of funny they use R for reflex, for a mirrorless. It should have been the EOS M, but it was used already. So I guess they went with the R. There's the camera goes for $2,299 for the body and $3,399, $3,400 with a 24 to 105 millimeter lens. One of the things that's interesting is that not only is it new cameras that both Canon and Nikon have introduced, they've also introduced new lenses to go along with these new cameras because that's part of the whole deal. I remember when Sony first came out, they were trashed because there was no glass to go along. It took them a long time to catch up. Canon and Nikon learned from that. From Canon, they are going to be releasing a 28 to 70 f2L. These are all L lenses also. A 50 millimeter f1.2, a 24 to 105 f4, and a 35 millimeter f1.8 macro lens. So
That's the only non-L one.
that's correct. That is an IS STM lens and a lot less expensive than the Ls. However, what it means is that if you get the camera, you do have enough lenses to get started. And what Nikon and Canon have also provided, they've introduced adapters. Each company have introduced adapters to go along with the cameras that enable it to use the native Nikon and native Canon lenses on these new Canon and Nikon bodies. And from what we understand, it's seamless. They're not balky. The metering works. The autofocus is good. And it's as if it was dedicated for it. So this is a real big advantage. And Nikon also came out with some new lenses as well, 3 lenses. Okay. So that's pretty important.
Yeah, it's big news, right? I mean, at least the biggest news
Yeah.
of the past year, right? Fair to say? I don't know.
Absolutely.
Anybody
It
want to
is.
throw back some?
Probably the biggest of the past few years, I would think. Right?
When was D850 announced? D850 was last year this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been a while
And by the
since-
way, they also mentioned, Nikon went out of the way to say that their new cameras are built to the same specs and standards as the D850. So even though these are, some people think cheaper cameras, they're not. They're built the same way. They're all weather resistant.
Mm-hmm.
The Z7 is built like a Nikon. It's a tank.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And how's that grip? Same? Feel the same?
No, actually, I'm trying to remember when the last time I held a D850 was. D850 seems to be like a wider, more full grip. Mm-hmm. Nikon is very proud of the grip on the Z7. It's a little bit too deep for me. And I have, I want to say, medium-sized hands.
One thing I did note about the Canon I really liked is that the LCD on top is black background with white lettering on it, and it's very easy to read. It was really nice.
Nikon also.
Nikon did the same. Okay, because we didn't see that, so that was pretty interesting. Another thing I really liked about the new cameras, I was looking at the aspect ratios, which I usually don't bother with, and most cameras will give you a 2:3, or if it's a micro 4/3, 4/3, and they'll often throw in 16:9. The EOS R gives you 3:2, 4:3, 16:9, and something that I love, 1:1. So you could shoot square images with it, which I happen to like that. So if you need a square format, or you want to shoot specifically for Instagram, for their default, you could just shoot that way, and you could preview it and get the images.
It's the
Which I
beauty.
like.
But the DSLRs offer that, don't they?
Nah, the Sony I can't do
Nikon
one
does,
to
huh?
one.
That's my Nikon.
The
does,
Nikon,
doesn't it?
well, Nikon, I don't know, but I believe also
don't
the
use
new
it, but yeah.
Nikons do come down to 1-to-1. I missed the spec here, but I believe I saw that it does.
Okay,
we can
cool.
check on that. But to me, that was a pretty interesting thing.
I just want to make one quick point.
Yeah.
One of the things that going to a digital viewfinder allows is now to switch between all those different formats. So I think in the
Yes.
past, SLRs were kind of a little hesitant to go there because it required kind of either user knowledge or to like tape out your
Right.
your viewing glass. Over here, you can just go straight and you see exactly what it is.
Right.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits of electronic viewfinders.
Now, any comments on the viewfinders on these cameras?
The screen, the rear screen on the Canon was gorgeous. The inside looked good also. They're into ridiculous resolving power. The EVF on the new Canon is 3,690,000 dots, which is like a million more dots than my Sony has, and the Sony is really good. So that is really, really nice. And the screen itself, the LCD, is also, it's 2.1 million dots. So the resolving power, the color, it's really just a beautiful, beautiful viewing screen to look at, both of them.
Right. For anyone who's used an A7R3,
Yeah.
once you've seen that viewfinder, everyone else has kind of got to match that level, I think. And I think Canon's done that because they both have similar resolving power. I'm pretty sure the Nikon's up there. They all look good. You know, at this point, you can't make a non-looking good EVF.
They're probably the same technology. They all have the same resolving power in EVFs, all of the new Canons and Nikons.
Both cameras are bigger than the Sony, right? You
They
guys-
are, yes. The
yeah.
Sony still remains to be the smallest of all the new cameras that have come out. Obviously, there's going to be the latest. Nikon has the X-Speed 6 image processor and the Digic 8 in the Canon. So they're using the latest technologies in all of these. Something that came to my mind, actually, let's talk about the Nikons for a little bit, since we're talking specs. Something that is not present in the Canon, which is kind of interesting, is image stabilization. There isn't any. And the Nikons both have 5-axis image stabilization. So for stability, low light, and the Nikon has it on them. One thing that Canon blows everybody away on it is the autofocus. They have 5,655 focus points.
They're saying a lot of stuff about this camera. I'm waiting to see it in real life. They're also saying -6 EV. for
Well, yeah, but they also
focusing.
qualify with an f1.2 lens when everyone else uses an f2 lens. So yeah, it's true, but maybe if you put a 1.2 lens on other cameras,
And
you'll come up with the
Nikon's
same
going to
numbers.
come out with a Noctum 0.95. Like, okay, let's
Yeah.
bring them
By
out.
the way, I
and see what
measured it's a
happens.
0.96.
My question
I went in there.
about the focus points, how much faster can autofocus really get though? I mean, is that going to be a
And a lot of
noticeable?
it has to do with coverage too. It's like almost the entire
I
viewing
see.
area.
So it's not just speed we're talking.
Yeah, it's also coverage. In other words,
Right.
your subjects could be anywhere within the
Right.
frame.
So it's the ability to focus in more places, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think back to the original autofocus. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember, but when the first autofocus cameras came out, you had one cross point in the center of the frame, which means your subject had to be in the middle, or you had to focus, lock it, and then it's a pleasure shooting these
That's
days.
the way I shoot, though.
Focus, recompose. Focus, recompose.
I
Focus,
still
hold,
do that a
recompose,
lot,
yeah.
but you don't have to do that.
Right.
Yeah, so
The other big thing is tracking. So when
Yeah.
you're using continuous autofocus, the camera has to predict where your subject is going or the item that you're focusing
Good
on.
point, yeah.
The more points that you have, the more accurately you're able to kind of follow through
And
the frame.
less likely the system will lose your subject. Okay, it's just
Exactly.
locking right
So
on.
that could be quite an advantage then.
Oh yeah. Well, just to give you an idea, the comparison: the Nikon Z7 has 493, and the Z6 273. Now, it does not mean that they're not bad at focusing; they could be very, very good. However, that is a huge difference in focus points. That gives you a lot of control.
So
Really,
I think
really does.
what I'm waiting to see side by side is Sony. We all know does a tremendous job. They built the autofocus right off of the sensor. They're solid and they've been around for a while. You know, we're talking Sony. We're talking generation 3.
Yeah,
of,
that's right.
Of these
Yeah.
systems, like they've been doing this. Canon has a really good autofocus technology that they're building off of, which is their dual pixel autofocus, which is something they introduced with the 70D, which I want to say is 3 years ago. And they brought it into their EOS Cinema line. They've been using it on the 5D Mark IV. They had it on the 60 Mark II. I mean, it's been around and it's tried and tested. And it's a very good system. Nikon, I used it, their autofocus. It seemed very snappy, but I would like to use it in the field and kind of see how it works, particularly for video and continuous tracking.
Which is the question I was going to go to next. The video specs. Neither one seemed to be video-centric cameras. Is that fair to say?
So
I'm
yes,
going
no.
to hand this over to you.
Yeah.
So yes, no. I didn't do as deep of a dive into their specs, but Canon's coming out. They're saying that they're putting 4K in. They
4K,
say
yeah.
that they're doing. They say that they're doing an H.264 compression. I think this is all gonna wait to see kind of how this all comes out, and once the kind of reviewers get to it, or once I get my hands to kind of chunk through their stuff. What I am seeing is they're not doing what the 5D Mark IV did, which is make an MPEG compression for 4K, but I don't fully know that yet. Sony is kind of the king in this realm. They have their pro level compressions on their A7 series. Nikon is now released N-Log, so everyone's got their own thing.
Yeah.
So Sony has S-Log. So just for those of you who are listening, log is not raw.
Right.
Log just means that we flattened out the curve, so you don't have spikes in your highlights or spikes in or down spikes in your shadows, kind of making
It controls the dynamic range.
exactly. And then that way, when you put in post, you're able to kind of stretch it back out. So Sony's called it S-Log forever, Canon's called it C-Log forever, and now Nikon has N-Log. They also came out with 120 frames per second in 1080, which is very nice. Sony's had that for a while, but to be going down that direction shows that Nikon is thinking about those shooters who want to be able to have their camera shoot slow-mo. The rest of it is yet to be seen. Like I'm
Luckily,
waiting.
they didn't put 360-degree viewing into this camera.
Oh my God.
That's next. Cool.
Something that came to my mind when looking at all these notes is that I'm wondering if we're going to see a new phenomenon that kind of started when the Sony came out and when mirrorless cameras came out. And again, when the Sony came out, you had a lot of Nikon and Canon owners, and they were able to adapt their lenses. So if you were a Canon shooter, you adapted your Canon lenses to your Sony. Nikon, you adapted your Nikon or whatever, and then you played around. Now we have cameras that are could be interchangeable. And what I'm thinking is that, say I'm a Sony shooter, and there's something about one of these the Canon camera or one of the Nikons that I like that does something that my current camera doesn't do. Using adapters, I could just buy that body and adapt all my existing lenses to it. So now, instead of just seeing like a Sony shooter who has 15 lenses or a Nikon or Canon shooter that uses different manufacturers, I'm wondering how many people are going to actually be buying these bodies as just another tool because it does something good.
So, folks, before you go out and do that, Alan shoots a lot of manual focus.
Yeah, right.
And that's and that's one of the big keys over here. Once we're starting to adapt over electronic lenses, it becomes a little bit more complicated.
Right. And I actually wanted to follow up on that.
But one thing I understand is that the adapters that they've made for these cameras, the Canon's adapter for their EF and EFS lenses and Nikon's adapter for their native lenses supposedly works beautifully. There's no hiccups, no nothing. Yeah. Now,
That's
if
what I
you can
wanted to
do
ask.
that...
Did you try them?
I tried the Nikon adapter.
You did.
It was solid.
I was told by the video guys that...
That's what I heard too.
They say it was just beautiful. Now, that is using dedicated stuff. It's only a matter of time before third-party companies like Metabones and all these other guys come out with the technology that will now enable you to do brand A on brand B. And really, you could just mix and match not just lenses now, but even cameras. Because until now, it's just been the Sony full frame. There wasn't another camera to play around with. Now we have multiple choices of full frame cameras, and we could start mixing and matching lenses. And that's that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Back to those adapters, you were happy with the Nikon?
The Nikon one felt really good, and it focused. It didn't seem to lose any speed.
And how big is it comparatively to the Sonys and the Canons that we've seen?
So I'm going to make with my fingers now. I mean, just look at the specs. It's a
not
standard
noticeably
size.
smaller. It's just
it's a standard size. So adapters, they're interesting because they have to create the same flange distance as you took away. One of the big things that Nikon is touting is that they've gone to like the smallest flange distance at I think 16 millimeters. They also have a really wide opening because they're 16 millimeters closed. They have to be super wide.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Also, with Canon, they introduced 3 different adapters. One of them actually has drop-in filters,
Yes.
which is interesting. So say you're shooting cinema or whatever, and you could now swap lens and not touch your polarizer or whatever filters you got going on there. That saves you time, and also the filters are smaller. You don't have to buy these large 80, 72, 77, 86 millimeter filters. They're all smaller ones that fit in the back.
They're also universal.
Yes.
So you swap a lens, your filters are still right in the back.
Everything is right
Your-
there.
And your ND is still there, or your polarizer.
That's great.
Less potchering around while you're shooting, which is important.
Exactly.
Let's talk
But
about.
Can we
yeah, go
talk
ahead.
about the adapters for one second?
Yes,
Because
please.
I think this is a really good point for listeners to understand. Adapters have been around for a long time now, 3, 4, 5. I mean, adapters have been around forever.
They've been around for a long time,
But
yeah.
electronic adapters really bringing a lot of Canon shooters over to Sony with the Metabones, as you mentioned before. They're really good. Now the native companies are making the adapters, which is awesome because that means that you're going to have all your full functionality through native lenses all the way through the system. Nikon's only brought out one adapter, and before anyone starts freaking out, no, they brought out the exact adapter that they need. They made it so that their camera is going to work exactly well with all their lenses.
Right.
Canon's gone a very interesting approach over here. They made one very basic adapter, which is just, hey, here's a simple adapter. It's $100. Go and adapt all your lenses over. Have fun. On all of their lenses that they're releasing now for the RF series, they've released a kind of a control ring on the lens itself. So there's an extra ring. You have your focus, you have your zoom, but now you also have a control ring. This can be modified to do a bunch of different functions. It's a fully customizable control ring. So you can add aperture to your control ring. You can do ISO on your control ring, or
Oh, interesting.
or maybe shutter speed. I mean, we have to see what it does. So they've released an adapter that has that.
So it's assignable.
Yes, it's assignable, and so now you can adapt your old lenses over. Like if you had the 24 to 72/8, you can adapt that over and now have this assignable control ring on the front, which is super awesome. Then there's the high-end adapter, as I guess you could say, just price-wise, it's the most expensive, is the one that gives you drop-in filter capabilities, which means you're not going to drop in a UV filter because that's going to go on the front of your lens, but you're going to drop in a polarizer, you could drop in an ND filter, and this is awesome because, as we were saying a minute ago, you can just swap your lens and retain all the same settings that you had before.
Yeah, much faster workflow.
And very creative. I like that Canon has kind of gone down this route, really, I think, thinking a little bit outside.
Can we talk a little bit about memory? Because I see that the Nikon is using XQD and Sony's SD, and in both cases, it's just one card slot.
Yeah,
Is that
single
right?
slots. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Which is kind of interesting because Sony already went to dual. But, hey,
So dual versus single is, I think, a really interesting conversation of itself, and I don't think it affects a majority of like your pro mature shooters or prosumer shooters.
not that it's 12 frames per second for most people. It's true.
Exactly. It's something that's really nice to have. And if you're
It's
a tech
nice
geek,
to know, yes.
If you're a tech geek like the rest of us, and like,
Sure.
absolutely you want the best. But I've been shooting, and hopefully God is not going to totally curse me on this, but I've been shooting single card for a long time. SD tends to be pretty solid memory wise, and I haven't had that many issues with it, thank God. For those pro levels or people who are capturing once in a lifetime type of stuff that they really want to have that extra level of redundancy, yeah, dual card slot all the way. Canon and Nikon not there yet. They'll bring it to you in a future version. I find it really interesting though that Nikon has gone XQD, and we know that they're invested in it with the D850, with the D5, like the D500. Like we know that they're going this direction, but it is a huge departure from what the rest of the market is doing. Like we mentioned before, Sony's on SD. Canon is going SD UHS-2, so you can get full speeds out of that, but you can still do UHS-1 cards. The reader should be backwards compatible. So you're not forcing people to go to a whole new card reader. You're not forcing people to go to a whole new type of thing. If you already have existing SD cards, slap them in, start shooting.
But, I didn't realize how revolutionary I was back then. But back in 1986, I actually had a Nikon F3 modified to shoot 2 rolls of film concurrently, so I'd have a backup all the time.
Really?
I didn't realize how revolutionary I was back then.
It's, you know what, in the film days, I think people were not as worried about that. Are you messing with us?
Yes, I am. Oh, man. You really fell for that?
I don't know that I
I'm
fell for it,
good.
but I started talking on it.
You should know me better by now, lady. How long have you known me?
Before we run down some of the spec, or maybe we'll just run down the specs for both of them, and if we want to throw any comparisons back and forth with those two and the Sony, I want to ask this quick question. I'm looking at the 6D Mark II. and it comes in at 1.5 pounds. EOS R 1.46 pounds. So, what's the advantage?
I don't think it's weight. I think it's size and form factor more than anything else.
All right. Well,
Am I right about it?
The advantage is interesting.
five.
I don't know that size is as big of an advantage as people tout it to be, because we all know that once you start putting on any of the big pieces of glass or anything like that, you're suddenly back at almost the same exact size. You gain a little bit weight, you gain a little bit size, but really removing the mirror opens up a lot of other technological advantages.
Sure.
And that's I think where the big thing comes in.
Once you go EVF, you never go back.
Oh, yeah?
That's, you know what? I'm funny. I go back all the time, and every time I go back, I'm like, oh, this is so awesome. I love shooting, just analog style and seeing through the ground glass, and like, oh, it's so great. And then I go back to EVF. I'm like, why did I ever think that? This is amazing. And then
I love a good optical viewfinder is amazing, but what pops my bubble each time is when I reach to do the magnifier for fine focusing. And I go, drat.
It's the nighttime performance is just unbelievable.
But that also has to do with the imaging technology, the sensor.
Yeah, but just the fact that it brightens the image for you.
Yes, you can see. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, because for focusing on a DSLR at night is almost
no. When I lose my keys, I actually look for it looking through my camera.
Exactly.
It's like
it's also really good because you can review images in the EVF, which I found very helpful.
Oh, huge
tons
for
of
checking
times.
Focus, especially beforehand. I use that. And I become a junkie on that one.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because a few years ago, the EVF was the big problem for mirrorless, right?
Right,
Yeah,
and
when they were
now you're
230,000 dots or 160,000 dots, it was like looking at espionage film. And I think it's also worth mentioning that probably, again, it just came out, its announcements. We haven't really had a chance to play with the stuff seriously. Seems to be better organized than Sony was up front as far as what they have, what they're presenting. They've got lenses to go along. They have a whole roadmap of lenses that'll be coming out. The technical aspects of it are pretty darn good. I mean, the original A7 was an amazing camera, but it seems to me that they are on par, and they learned a lot. They did their homework here, I would say.
They're coming into an existing market.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Yeah. Somebody else broke the ice already.
Exactly.
Sure.
Right.
Let me just ask one thing though, Levi. The Nikons that you used weren't production. They were
They were officially pre-production. The card slots were taped.
right.
Yeah.
So anything we say here could be subject.
That's
to
a good.
change.
That's a good
Absolutely.
point.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a very, very good point. Yep. Yeah, and that's another thing. Quite often we get an opportunity to see cameras before they're even officially announced. That's one of the fun things about being here. And often they are pre-production, and the cameras do have glitches. And when we review them, we have to take that into account. And often when I've gone back to production models of cameras I had tested early on, they're running clean. They're running better. The
kinks are worked out.
Yeah, you got to be careful of that. So we can't prejudge.
Let me ask you guys who follow this a little bit more than I do. Have the rumors been circulating pretty heavily over the past months that these were in the works, or are these kind of surprise announcements?
Nikon was talked about. I think Canon was more of a surprise. There was rumors about it, but
I mean, there've been rumors forever. So
Sure.
which version of the rumor?
Yeah.
I've been a little off the sites as of recently, but I know both Canon and Nikon were sort of, at least to some degree, leaked. Canon almost like 1-to-1 was leaked beforehand.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And Nikon, I'm pretty sure, but I wasn't following as closely prior to the Nikon release.
But it was interesting how these are both companies that for the longest time were just saying that you don't need full frame. You don't need
Well, you don't need mirrorless.
You don't
and
need
then you
mirrorless.
don't need
Yeah,
full
we
frame
have
mirrorless.
DSLRs. They do everything.
Right.
But
So here's
The
my
market talks.
here's my this is Levy's corner of don't believe 20% of this or not.
Right.
But Canon is in an interesting spot because you would think that they would kill out EOS M with this
I was
release.
going to ask. Yeah.
EOS M is still here. They're bringing out a new lens for it. I still don't fully understand their play with EOS M, but with EOS M in the market, is kind of seen that as their kind of like their Sony A6500 version or something like in that range. Not that the two are comparable, but kind of like that kind of like entry level market. Then you have this, what is it, $2,200 full frame camera, seems to be like just above a 60 Mark II as far as pricing and positioning. I do think that we're going to see another Canon camera, mirrorless full frame, as like a EOS RR or RS
Definitely.
or whatever.
The higher end one. The higher end one.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. They're not going to be
Well, that
arrested.
makes
This is
sense.
start. This is the starting shot right
And
here.
they may have also learned from Sony too, who kind of have released 3 cameras at a time, right? I mean, with the RS
Yeah,
and straight up
variations.
A7. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just looking at the Canon, I wonder if they rushed this thing to market since Nikon just dropped, their
You
mirrorless.
can't rush this to market.
Well,
So I actually I'm not with you on this, Jason.
you don't think that you?
I don't think it's rushed to market. It may not have the features I would have wanted, but it's a very Canon type camera. And what I think of that is that meaning they're not going to release a D850. They don't have a D850 on the market, right? So Nikon released a as close to a D850 as they could, and I think it was actually very cool that Nikon released both a D850 and a D750, so to speak, at the same time in the mirrorless market.
Right.
Canon, on the other hand, is they already have a mirrorless camera that they're keeping alive, and now they're releasing kind of like your entry level to full frame camera.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to see what their kind of next play is going to be. The other thing is they're releasing way more interesting glass.
Yeah, no, their
they seem
lenses
to-
are
yeah.
very 28 to 70 f2, which is kind of neat.
Yep.
High speed 50, 35 macro, and they're all fast. The 24 to 105, that's a f4.
But it's a kit lens.
That's
and,
fine.
And go.
And that's perfectly fine. But I think that's a good start. And especially if you could take all of your existing EF and EFS lenses and work seamlessly with them according to everything we understand using the adapters that are available. That is a very viable system.
Now, is there any specs that you guys have seen that really stand out to you? Something that needs to be mentioned outside of the conversation about mirrorless versus DSLR?
First thing that comes to mind is that both Canon and Nikon are using existing batteries,
Yeah.
which I think is very nice.
and smart.
Mm-hmm.
They won't run into that problem that Sony did.
Okay.
No, it's good for everybody.
8 frames per second on the Canon.
They're all fast.
You got 9 on the
12 on the
Z7
Z6.
and 12 on the Z6.
And the
for
truth of the
Nikon.
matter, let's be realistic. For the average person out there, 8 frames a second is more than anybody needs.
Yeah.
So let's just let's get to the specs. Let's run down the specs.
Let's do a little overview of each of the cameras here. We have the Canon EOS R, which is the one and only camera that they've introduced so far. It's going to be the suggested price is $2,300 for the body and $3,400 with a 24 to 105 millimeter lens. It's got a 30 megapixel sensor, a Digic 8 image processor. You could pump it up to 40,000 ISO. It's not image stabilized. It does shoot JPEG, RAW, and compressed RAW, C-RAW. It's got 80 billion focus points, actually 5,655, which is a lot. All the aspect ratio, including square, which is big for me. Tilt screen, 3.2 inches, 2.1 million dots, and it's a touch screen, which is kind of cool.
I want to just point out this is
Yeah.
big because they have a touch screen. A flip out screen, right? It comes out.
Yes.
Whereas everybody else just has a tilt screen.
That's right. This whole thing, that's right, swings out there. I noticed that.
Good. Thank you.
The EVF is 3,690,000 dots, which is a lot. All of the cameras we're talking about, they top out at an 8,000th of a second, and they all have a top flash sync of a 200th of a second. As a comparison, the Sony A7 cameras, they also go up to an 8,000th, but they sync at 1/250th with flash, which if you shoot flash, especially outdoors, does make a difference. None of these cameras have a built-in flash. The Canon tops out at 8 frames per second. Stereo mic, mono speaker, SD cards, UHS 2 supported, 370 exposures per battery charge according to the specs. It's 1.46 pounds, and the size is 5.35 by 3.86 by 3.31, a little bit bigger than the A7s. There is an orientation center, no GPS, no time lapse. That's the Canon, the EOS R. Okay. The Nikon Z6, it costs $2,000 for the body only. It's a 25 megapixel sensor, an XSpeed 6 image processor, goes up to 51,200 ISO, and you can expand it to 204,800. Why you'd want to do that, I don't know. Both of the Nikons have 5-axis sensor shift. They both shoot JPEG RAW, and that's 12 or 14 bit. and it has 273 focus points. It does have a 3.2-inch tilt screen that is also a touch screen and over 2 million dots. And as we said, all of these cameras have the same resolution in the EVF, which is 3,690,000 dots. What else we got here? 12 frames per second. And XQD cards. And they're all about the same size and weight.
Mm-hmm.
It does have an orientation sensor. It does have
GPS.
time lapse. And it does not have GPS. No.
Yeah, time lapse they've had in their systems for a while. So
Yeah.
it's like the same exact menu as like a D850.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing that Nikon is touting, and I'm not sure, I don't recall if Canon's saying this, but Nikon's saying that these are the Z7 for sure is built like a D850. It's fully dust resistant. It's splash
They make a
proof,
point
like,
of that. Yeah, it's the
that's something they're
same
really
construction,
touting.
same standard.
And the Z7, just touch on the ones that
Yeah.
are different. Yeah.
The Z7, that is it's $3,400, 46 megapixel XP 6, goes up to 25,600 ISO, and you can get up to 102,400. 5-axis sensor shift. What else we got here? Same screens, same LCDs, same sync speed, 9 frames per second, and takes also the XQD cards. And same thing as far as GPS and all that other stuff. That's kind of similar. So it's a higher resolution, beefier file camera.
Cool.
That's where we are.
One thing I wanted to point out earlier, and I forgot to, is that John was asking earlier about the size of the camera, or Alan was, that we're not really seeing huge size differences over here, particularly once we put on like big lenses. Which also is worth pointing out that they also don't balance well once you're using big lenses. But neither Canon nor Nikon is putting out any sort of like compact lens. Or some sort of like let's go to like
Mirrorless.
truly being very small.
Well, that was the big thing of mirrorless, is that now everything can be scaled down, and it's true. You take out that 70 to 200 2.8, you got a big camera again.
Yeah.
And I think that's also one of the reasons why I was attracted to mirrorless, is that I was able to adapt a lot of very small, tiny manual focus lenses. Not all of them fast, but they're light, they're small, and they're sharp. And yeah, that's what you lose when you do put on a DSLR lens.
Let me just wrap this part up before we get onto the Fuji winners the Fujifilm winners, by saying that, we have pretty much the same information that the public does, in the sense that we're getting the specs from the manufacturers. You guys have handled the cameras briefly, pre-production models. So, we're speculating a bit here, and take everything you hear with a grain of salt. We're giving the information we have, and, I guess the proof is in the pudding. We'll wait and see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I emailed Nikon today asking if I could take one for the holiday coming up, but they don't have any production ones that are available yet.
Did
Is there a
Did
date?
you mention my name?
I mentioned my
Call
name.
him back and drop my name.
Is there a date that they've mentioned when we'll have these here in stock? And I guess you can pre-order already, right?
It would be on the site.
Yeah.
Canon for sure not.
Okay.
Canon, even some pricing is not up yet. I think on the new long lenses that they released today, the pricing is not up.
I was looking at our site today. It's spotty. There's stuff that's missing.
Okay.
I
So
think
this
we're putting stuff up as information comes
Yeah.
into us.
Yeah. So we wanted to get kind of this information to our listeners as soon as possible, because it's a pretty big news. But follow us and take a look at the website.
And I'm
keep
sure
up
we're going to
with
be
the
doing a
latest.
lot of hands-on reviews of these cameras and these lenses and everything else, because we want to handle them as much as you guys
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Great. Thanks,
Yeah.
Levi.
Thanks.
All right, now, here's a big moment a lot of people have been waiting for here. We're going to announce the winners of the Fujifilm sweepstakes. All right, here we go. The winner of the Fujifilm X-E3 camera with a Fujinon XF23mm f2 lens is Nalain Singh from right here in New York, Astoria, Queens. Congrats, Nalain. Now, the winner of our grand prize, the Fujifilm X-H1 camera with a Fujinon XF35 f2 lens, is Brian Duckart from Santa Cruz, California. We go from coast to coast. Anyway, congrats to both of you guys. We are going to be speaking to our winners in an upcoming episode, find out what they think of their cameras, get to find out what they do, who they are, the kind of pictures that they take. And this is exciting stuff. And for those of you who didn't win, keep one thing in mind. We're already working on our next sweepstakes. It's the kind of thing we like doing, and we know you guys like it too. So we're not going to stop. Our goal is to make the show as much fun as is possible. That said, on behalf of Jason, John, and myself, thank you so much for joining us today